The moment the man stepped into the shelter, a tiny German Shepherd puppy let out a heartbreaking cry. Volunteers froze. Why was this puppy sobbing like that? Seconds later, the man knelt down, and everyone realized the truth. What happened next shattered hearts across the room. The morning sun filtered softly through the dusty windows of Willow Creek Animal Shelter, casting golden stripes along the cold concrete floor. Volunteers moved quietly between kennels, refilling water bowls and whispering soothing words to the restless animals. For most, it was just another day of waiting. Waiting for a family, waiting for hope. Then, the front door creaked open. A man stepped inside, his heavy boots echoing across the quiet hall. He paused, his hand lingering on the doorknob as though unsure if he should even be there. His eyes were tired, rimmed with something deeper than exhaustion, grief, maybe. Volunteers exchanged curious glances as he hesitated in the entryway, scanning the long rows of kennels. The dogs stirred. Some barked. Others wagged their tails hopefully. But the man barely noticed them, his steps slow, almost reluctant, as if each one carried a weight he could barely bear. He walked past kennel after kennel, his gaze drifting but never settling, until he reached the far end of the corridor. The shelter fell silent for a moment, a breath held in the still air. No one knew yet that this quiet stranger was about to change one puppy's life, and his own. As the man reached the final row of kennels, a faint whimper broke the stillness. He stopped. Slowly, he turned his head toward the sound, and his eyes landed on a small German Shepherd puppy pressed against the chain-link fence. The puppy's ears perked up, its tiny tail twitching nervously, and then it let out a heart-wrenching cry. Not a bark, not a whine. Something deeper, a sound that seemed to hold weeks of longing. Volunteers froze where they stood, watching in stunned silence as the puppy pawed desperately at the fence, trying to reach the man. The man crouched. Slowly, as if in a daze, and extended his trembling hand toward the tiny paw. The moment their skin and fur touched, the puppy let out another sharp, emotional cry, pressing its face to the man's fingers. Tears welled in the man's eyes. He whispered something no one else could hear. "Buddy, is it really you?" In that instant, the entire shelter felt the weight of a silent truth. This wasn't just a random meeting. This puppy knew him, recognized him, and had been waiting, somehow believing he would come back. But behind that reunion was a shadow. None of them could yet see. The man's hands trembled as he held onto the small paw through the cold metal fence. The puppy whined louder, licking his fingers desperately, as if trying to erase the time they had been apart. A tear slid down the man's cheek, then another. He wasn't the only one. Volunteers nearby discreetly wiped their eyes. Memories flooded back. This puppy had been a part of his family once. He remembered the day he first brought it home, small enough to fit in one hand, tail wagging like it had no care in the world. Life had been brighter then. But life had a cruel way of taking things away. "Buddy, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. His words were almost swallowed by the echoes of other dogs barking in the shelter. The German Shepherd tilted its head, whimpering, and then pressed its entire tiny body against the fence, refusing to let go of the man's touch. Around them, the world seemed to pause. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a silent conversation of love, regret, and hope. A reunion that brought joy for a moment, but an unspoken sadness loomed, as if something about this meeting wasn't meant to last. Just as the man knelt there, whispering to the puppy, a shelter worker slowly approached, her expression heavy with sympathy. She hesitated before speaking, knowing the words she carried would break him. "Sir," she said softly, "I need to tell you something. This puppy has already been placed for adoption. He's scheduled to leave tomorrow." The man froze, his heart pounding. "What?" he whispered, barely able to process the words. He glanced at the little German Shepherd pressing against the fence, tail wagging, unaware of the painful reality unfolding. The worker knelt beside him, her voice gentle. "We tried to contact the registered owner months ago. No one ever came, and legally, we had to put him up for adoption. Another family fell in love with him." The man's eyes filled with tears, guilt washing over him. He had moved cities after losing his home, and in the chaos, he thought the little pup had been lost forever. He never imagined they would meet again, only for fate to play such a cruel trick. The puppy whined, sensing the man's sorrow, pawing at him desperately. In that moment, the shelter felt colder, and time itself felt like it was running out. The man's chest tightened as he stared into the puppy's wide, innocent eyes. He could feel the tiny paw still resting on his hand, trembling slightly. For a moment, he didn't care about the rules or the paperwork. He only knew that his best friend had found him again, and he couldn't lose him twice. "Please," he said, his voice breaking as he turned to the shelter worker. "You don't understand. He's mine. He's always been mine. We were separated because of life. I didn't abandon him. I thought I lost him forever." The worker hesitated, torn between empathy and protocol. "I believe you," she said softly, "but the adoption has already been processed. The new family is coming tomorrow, and they've waited weeks." The man ran a trembling hand over his face, trying to hold himself together. Around them, the puppy barked softly, whining, as if pleading too. Other volunteers had stopped to watch, their hearts aching at the sight of the reunion. "Can I at least spend some time with him?" the man asked finally, his voice almost a whisper. The worker nodded gently. "Yes, I think he deserves that. Both of you do." The shelter staff opened the kennel door, and the small German shepherd puppy bolted straight into the man's arms. He held the trembling little body close to his chest, feeling the rapid heartbeat against his own. For the first time in months, the world outside that room didn't exist, just him and his loyal friend. The puppy licked his face endlessly, whining softly between kisses, while the man whispered, "I missed you. I missed you so much." He sat on the floor, letting the puppy crawl into his lap, clinging to him as if afraid he would vanish again. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The man told the puppy everything, about the hard months, the nights he thought he'd never see him again, and the promise he silently made to never let him go if life gave him one more chance. When the shelter worker finally returned, her expression was kind but firm. "It's time," she said quietly. The man hugged the puppy one last time, his tears falling into the soft fur. The puppy whimpered, pressing its head into his neck, as if begging him not to leave. It was a goodbye neither of them wanted, but it was one they couldn't escape. The man stood at the shelter's exit, watching as the little German shepherd was gently led back into his kennel. His heart felt like it was breaking all over again. He turned to leave, but the sound of the puppy's cries followed him, echoing down the hallway like a plea he couldn't answer. Outside, the cool evening air hit his face, mixing with the warmth of his tears. He had taken only a few steps toward his car when he heard someone calling his name. It was the shelter worker, jogging toward him, holding a phone in her hand. "Sir, wait," she said, slightly out of breath. "I just called the family who adopted him. I told them your story. They said they want you to have him. They believe he belongs with you." For a moment, he couldn't move. Then, as the words sank in, he ran back inside. The staff opened the kennel, and the puppy leapt into his arms with a joyful bark. This time, there would be no goodbye. He cradled his puppy tightly, whispering through tears, "We're going home.